Let me take you back to a moment I thought would be the start of something peaceful, something calm, maybe even a little boring in the best way. I had just bought my first house. Not rented, a small, one-story ranch-style home tucked into a quiet cul-de-sac, surrounded by big leafy trees, chirping birds, and neighbors who smiled and waved when you passed them by. It wasn't fancy, it didn't have granite countertops or a wine fridge, but it was mine. After years of living in cramped apartments with thin walls and broken elevators, I finally had my own space. I could paint the walls bright purple if I wanted to. I could plant tomatoes in the front yard. I could put a flamingo in the lawn, and no one could stop me. And you know what the best part was? No hoe. That was non-negotiable. When I started house hunting, one of my very first filters was no homeowners association. I didn't want to live anywhere where a nosy group of self-appointed rule enforcers could tell me what kind of blinds to hang or how often I needed to edge my lawn. So when I found this cute little place that checked all my boxes and had no HOA, I practically threw my money at the realtor. She even reassured me during closing, "Don't worry. This property isn't under any homeowners association. You're free to do your own thing." Perfect. For the first few weeks, it was everything I hoped for. Quiet mornings with coffee on the porch. Afternoons gardening in the backyard. I met a few friendly neighbors, retired couples, mostly people who baked banana bread and walked tiny dogs named things like Muffin or Buttons. It felt peaceful, safe, simple. But then, one morning, the peace shattered. It was a Saturday. I was outside in a hoodie and old jeans, cleaning up some leftover bags of mulch I hadn't used. My dog, Max, a big, goofy golden retriever, was laying in the grass, completely unbothered by the world, and that's when she walked up. Karen. Now, at the time, I didn't know her name, but let's be honest, you already know exactly the kind of person I'm talking about. Platinum blonde hair, pulled back so tight you could probably bounce a quarter off her face, lipstick like it was applied with a ruler, a clipboard in hand, and an expression that screamed, "I've been waiting all day to ruin yours." She didn't say hello, didn't smile, didn't ask if I had a minute. She just launched into it like she was reading off a script. "Hi, I noticed your backyard has a shed. That's not allowed under Section 14B of the Community Guidelines. Sheds must be uniform in appearance and approved by the Architectural Committee." I blinked at her, completely thrown off. "Sorry, what now?" She narrowed her eyes like I was playing dumb. "You're not in compliance. I'll need you to submit a request for approval or have it removed." Now, here's the thing. I didn't get mad right away. I thought maybe this was just a weird misunderstanding. So I replied calmly, "Oh, I think you might be mistaken. My house isn't part of the HOA. It's not under your jurisdiction." Her mouth twisted, like she just sucked on a lemon. "If you live in Willow Creek, you're part of the HOA. Everyone is." "No," I said, polite but firm. "My property was excluded when the neighborhood was built. The realtor made that very clear. I even have the paperwork." And just like that, she froze. Her face didn't move, but I could feel the fury building under that calm exterior. She stared at me, said nothing, then turned and walked off. I actually laughed a little, thought, well, that was weird, and went back to moving mulch. But friends, it was just the beginning. The very next morning, I opened my front door to get the paper and found a bright yellow envelope taped to it. It looked official at first until I noticed it was printed on regular computer paper and Comic Sans. It claimed I was being cited for several violations: unapproved backyard structure, failure to maintain landscaping, improper mailbox design, and get these a non-compliant front door color. The thing I said, broken bar. My door was white, like every other door on the street. At the bottom, it said, "You have 14 days to resolve these violations or face fines." A Willow Creek HOA compliance officer. I burst out laughing. It was so fake it felt like a prank, like some 12-year-old trying to play neighborhood hall monitor. But they ain't a broken bar. The letters kept coming, every other day. Another notice. One said I owed $125 in unpaid HOA dues. Another threatened to report me to community legal enforcement. One of them had an actual photo of my car parked in the driveway with a note that said, "This vehicle has not been registered with the HOA. Violators may be towed." That one pissed me off. So I walked straight over to Karen's house, I'd asked around and confirmed she was the president of the Willow Creek HOA. Her yard had a little wooden sign that said this property is maintained with pride, a Willow Creek HOA board president. I knocked. She opened the door with a smug smile, like she'd been expecting me. "Hi," I said. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but I've now received 4 fake violation notices on my door. As I've said before, I don't live under your HOA. My property is not part of Willow Creek." She didn't flinch. "If you live on this block, you're in the HOA. It's common property." I actually laughed. "Number, my property is legally excluded. I have the plat map, the title report, everything. You can't make up rules for homes you don't control." She leaned forward, voice low. "If you refuse to cooperate, I'll escalate this." I stared at her. "You do what you have to do, Karen, but leave me out of your little HOA drama." I walked away, but that was far from the end. The next day, a tow truck showed up in front of my house. I ran out, asked the guy what he was doing, and he said my vehicle had been reported for non-compliance by the HOA. I had to literally stand in front of my car and wave a copy of my deed in his face to stop him from hooking it up. And guess who stood across the street with her arms crossed the whole time? Yup, Karen. At that point, I called a lawyer friend of mine. He told me to start keeping a paper trail, record every notice, take photos, get camera footage, all of it. So I did. The next weekend, I had some friends over. We grilled out, played music, but nothing crazy, just some country music, a Bluetooth speaker, a little laughter. At 8:45 p.m., a flashlight beam lit up my backyard. Karen was standing at the edge of my property with a notepad, writing things down. That was it. I walked up and said, "If you step onto my property again, I'll file for harassment and trespassing." She didn't even blink. She just said, "You'll be hearing from my attorney." And wouldn't you know it, a broken bar. 2 weeks later, I was served. This woman, this self-appointed dictator, had filed a lawsuit against me in small claims court. She was demanding over $1,000 in unpaid HOA dues and violation fines. She claimed I'd broken the community standards agreement and damaged neighborhood property value. I remember holding those papers and just laughing out loud, because it was so incredibly absurd. It almost felt like a comedy sketch. But this wasn't funny anymore. Now it was real, and I had a decision to make. Ignore her? Settle? Let this woman push me around? Nope. I decided to fight, to walk into court and shut it down, hard, fast. 3 minutes or less. You'd think that by the time a person takes you to court for being part of an HOA you're not even in, the worst is already behind you. But number, Karen had only just begun. Let's rewind to the moment I got served. I remember vividly. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was standing in my kitchen trying to make a grilled cheese sandwich when I heard a knock on the door. I opened it expecting a delivery or maybe an Ibarra, but nope. A man in khakis and a windbreaker handed me an envelope and said, "You've been served. Have a good day." At first, I thought it had to be a mistake, some sort of identity mix-up, but the second I opened that envelope and saw Karen's full name, Karen Elizabeth Hoffman, president of the Willow Creek HOA, listed as the plaintiff, my jaw literally dropped. She was suing me for $890 in unpaid HOA dues, $275 in community fines, $250 in administrative fees, and, get this, $35 in legal processing costs she claimed were associated with handling my violations. Total, $1,450. And what was the basis of her lawsuit? According to her, my property fell under the HOA's jurisdiction through implied community standards, and I had benefited from the neighborhood's shared value and reputation. I wanted to scream, or laugh, or both. I didn't even live in her HOA. That was the whole point. I had receipts, title documents, a subdivision plat map, all of it. Now, I could have gone scorched earth right then, but my lawyer friend Micah told me, play it cool, document everything, let her dig her own grave. And boy, did she start digging fast. From the moment I got the lawsuit, it was like a switch flipped in Karen's mind. I wasn't just a neighbor anymore, I was public enemy number one. It started small. Every few days, I'd find another notice taped to my door. These weren't even printed on letterhead anymore, yet they looked like they were made on Microsoft Word using clip art from 1999. One said, You are hereby ordered to remove unsanctioned garden ornaments, that is, ceramic gnome, flamingo, and unauthorized wind chime, within 72 hours. Another, grass may not exceed 3 inches. Your lawn is at 3.25. Final warning, I mean a broken bar who measures grass height with that level of accuracy? Then she started involving other neighbors. A few of them, especially the more timid elderly ones, began acting a broken bar off. One couple stopped waving at me. A man across the street suddenly started walking his dog around my property instead of past it. I later found out Karen had gone door to door with copies of the lawsuit, telling people I was a community hazard and refused to follow rules like everyone else. But the most insane part? She sent out a printed flyer, folded and mailed to every mailbox on the block, titled, "Thy Superscript HOA Warning, Rogue Resident Endangering Property Values." Thy Superscript HOA. It included a picture of my house, a zoomed-in photo of my mailbox, and a blurry image of me walking my dog like I was some kind of local menace. She wrote that I was refusing to pay dues, ignoring legal orders, and actively dismantling community standards. I kept every copy, every note, every flyer. My Karen folder was growing thicker by the day. I wasn't just sitting back while this woman tried to assassinate my character. I was working behind the scenes with Mike to get everything in order for court. Now, Mike wasn't just some guy with a law degree. He specialized in real estate and HOA disputes. As soon as I showed him my documents, he said, "She doesn't have a leg to stand on." We gathered my property deed, which clearly stated no HOA binding, a title report confirming I was outside of all HOA jurisdictions, the original subdivision map showing the border ending right before my house, emails from my realtor, and statements from the local county office confirming I was not part of Willow Creek HOA. I even went the extra mile and requested documents from the Willow Creek HOA charter. Turns out, their original articles of incorporation specifically excluded my lot number. Mike laughed when he read them. If she brings this to court, it's going to be embarrassing for her. A few days before the court date, I got a phone call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The message: "Hi, this is Karen Hoffman from the Willow Creek HOA. I just wanted to let you know that if you withdraw your countersuit and agree to start paying dues moving forward, we may be able to settle this without further damage to your record." She sounded so smug, so sure that I'd crack under pressure. Well, spoiler alert, I didn't. Then, in a last-ditch effort, Karen tried to make things public. She emailed our neighborhood's online bulletin board claiming I was suing the HOA for personal gain and that I was a litigious, ungrateful resident undermining community trust. It was beyond desperate. It was delusional. What she didn't realize was that I had already contacted the moderator of that board and sent proof I wasn't a member of the HOA. Her post got deleted within 24 hours, and she received a warning that drove her over the edge. The next morning, she stood outside my house, taking pictures with her phone like she was building a case for the FBI. I walked out and asked if she needed anything. She said, "I hope you've got a good suit ready for court. This is going to be a long battle." I smiled and replied, "You might want to pack light. You won't be there long." Finally, the day arrived. I showed up at the courthouse in slacks, a button-down shirt, and a thick binder full of documents. "Karen?" She came in wearing a red pantsuit like she was running for city council. She had 2 file boxes stacked on a dolly and a full legal pad scribbled with notes. Mike leaned over and whispered, "She thinks she's in a courtroom drama." As we sat down, the judge entered, a no-nonsense woman probably in her 50s. She looked at both of us, asked us to present opening statements. Karen launched into a speech. I mean a full-on, emotional TED Talk. She talked about community pride, neighbors who refused to cooperate, and the dangers of non-compliance. She even passed out printed photos of my lawn ornaments, my shed, and my trash cans. The judge held up a hand and asked, "Can you please provide the documentation showing this individual's home falls under your HOA's authority?" Karen, smiling confidently, opened her binder and began flipping pages. 5 seconds a broken bar, 10 seconds a broken bar. She was still flipping. The judge repeated the question. Karen mumbled something about implied borders and community cohesion. Mike stood up, walked to the judge, and handed her one sheet of paper, the subdivision plat map, certified by the county. clearly marking my property outside the HOA boundary. Then we handed her a notarized statement from the county zoning office, confirming that my property was never enrolled in Willow Creek HOA. The judge read silently for maybe 30 seconds, then looked up at Karen and said, "Ma'am, you filed a lawsuit against someone who is not, and has never been, under your association's legal authority." Karen opened her mouth, then closed it again. "I'm dismissing this case," the judge said firmly. "You are advised to stop further attempts to impose rules on a non-member. If you continue, you may face harassment charges." Karen turned bright red. Just like that, it was over. In less than 3 minutes, when I walked out of that courtroom, it felt like I had won a heavyweight championship. Karen stormed past me without a word, her boxes wobbling behind her. She wouldn't even make eye contact. And guess what? She never tried anything again. The flyers stopped. The fake notices disappeared. I never saw another tow truck near my house. She became almost invisible after that, like she'd been exiled in her own kingdom. Peace, at last. You'd think the story ended the moment I walked out of that courtroom with a clean victory. That Karen, after being humiliated in front of a judge, would have packed up her little red pantsuit and clipboard and quietly faded into the background. But because with people like Karen, a broken bar losing doesn't mean they've learned. It just means they're wounded and now they're dangerous in a whole new way. This last chapter isn't about the legal fight. That part was already over. This was about what happened after. The fallout, the whispers, the slow-motion unraveling of the woman who tried to sue me over rules that didn't apply and ended up exposing herself in the process. Let's rewind to the day after court. Chapter 1, the calm after the storm. Or so I thought. I woke up that morning with the best sleep I'd had in months. No letters on my door, no tow trucks, no one measuring my lawn with a ruler. I took Max on his morning walk, and for the first time in ages, it felt a broken bar peaceful again. But that peace, it didn't extend to Karen. Later that afternoon, I got a message from a neighbor, just a simple text. "Yo, did you see the whole group chat? It's blowing up." Now, I wasn't in the Willow Creek HOA obviously, but someone had added me as a guest to a public neighborhood forum a while back during a yard sale event. Turns out, Karen had posted in the group chat, claiming I had deceived the court and manipulated the legal process. She said the judge didn't understand the HOA charter, and that my lawyer intimidated her into backing down. It was classic Karen. If she couldn't win by the rules, she'd just rewrite the story. But the comments? Oh, the comments were golden. One neighbor replied, "Karen, I just checked the plat map. He's not even in our HOA." Another said, "This makes us all look bad. Please stop." And my personal favorite, "Can we vote to remove her already?" That was the first moment I realized at a broken bar the tide was turning. The courtroom loss didn't just bruise Karen's ego, it cracked the illusion of authority she built around herself for years. And when one crack forms, others start to follow. Over the next week, I had 3 different neighbors approach me privately. First was Rick, the retired Air Force guy 2 doors down. He said, "I owe you an apology. Karen told me you were trying to sue the HOA for money. She told us you were freeloading and disrespecting the community. I should have asked you directly. That's on me." I shook his hand and told him no hard feelings, because honestly, I understood. Karen didn't rule with logic, she ruled with fear. She knew how to manipulate, how to isolate people. It's what made her so effective for so long. But now a broken bar, the spell was breaking. Then came Mia, a single mom who'd lived on the block for years. She said, "I've been scared of Karen since the day I moved in. She fined me $100 for leaving my garbage bin out for 5 hours. 5 hours. Thank you for standing up to her. You gave the rest of us courage." That hit me, because it made me realize the story wasn't just mine anymore. It was everyone's. The Diaresis Sedilla Chapter 3, the vote heard around Willow Creek. About 2 weeks after the court case, a flyer went out in everyone's mailbox. Not from Karen this time, Mia from the HOA board. It read, "Notice of special meeting. Proposal to remove current HOA president due to misuse of authority and community disruption." I couldn't believe it. Karen's own board was turning on her. Apparently, the court loss, the fake fines, the flyers, the trespassing, everything had caught up with her. Multiple complaints had been filed, and a group of residents was pushing for a formal vote to remove her as HOA president. Word spread fast. People started talking openly at mailboxes, over fences, during dog walks. One guy even printed out Karen's lawsuit against me and posted it on the community bulletin board with the headline, "I know who represents you." It was savage. The night of the vote, over 40 residents showed up. That's practically the entire neighborhood. Karen came in late, dressed in a beige suit, acting like she still ran the place. She sat at the front of the clubhouse with her notebook and pen, ready to defend her record, but the board didn't let her talk first. Instead, they let the community speak. One by one, people stood up. Mia, the single mom, told her story. Rick talked about how Karen fined him for a flagpole being too tall. An older woman named Dolores said Karen made her cry once over the color of her flower pots. And then a broken bar. They called me up. I told them everything, from the fake notices to the bogus lawsuit. I brought the court documents, the photos, the flyers she taped to my door. I showed them the plat map, the judge's dismissal. And I ended with this: I didn't want to fight, I just wanted to be left alone. But when someone crosses the line from enforcing rules to abusing power, they shouldn't be allowed to lead a community. The room clapped. Karen didn't even look at me. She just scribbled furiously in her notebook. When it was finally her turn to speak, she stood up, cleared her throat, and said, "I only did what I thought was best for preserving this neighborhood." That was it. No apology, no remorse, no recognition of the damage she'd caused. And then the vote began. Hands raised. 1, 2, 3. More than 2/3. Karen was officially removed. She sat there frozen as the board thanked everyone and ended the meeting. I'd never seen her so quiet. In the weeks that followed, things changed, for the better. Karen wasn't seen much anymore. Her once perfect yard started looking overgrown. Her little proud HOA president lawn sign gone. Word got around that she'd resigned from the board entirely and was considering selling her house. I didn't celebrate, not really, because as satisfying as it all was seeing truth win, seeing people stand up, it also reminded me how easy it is for someone with a little power and a lot of ego to make life hell for others. But the community healed. We started having block cookouts again. People helped repaint an elderly couple's fence. I even let some of the neighborhood kids paint my shed mural style just for fun. And best of all, no more notices, no more threats, no more Karen. Final reflection. What I learned looking back: I never expected a peaceful little house to turn into a courtroom drama. I didn't think I'd need legal documents just to live in peace. And I definitely didn't think a random neighbor named Karen would try to run my life. But I learned something valuable. Bullies don't always come loud and obvious. Sometimes, they come with a clipboard, a title, and a smile. And sometimes, the best way to shut them down a broken bar is to stand up, calmly, legally, publicly. So to anyone dealing with a Karen in their life, especially in HOA Karen, keep your documents, know your rights, and don't be afraid to push back, because sometimes a broken bar justice takes less than 3 minutes. Thank you for watching Anna Drama Nest. Like, comment, and share if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare or had a Karen try to push you around.